Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. We love to get into the nitty-gritty here, and today is no exception because we're diving headfirst into a pretty contentious issue: gun control and suspected terrorists.
Buckle up.
Yeah, seriously, this one's going to be a ride.
Mhm.
So one of you amazing listeners sent in an audio clip, and it's making some pretty bold claims. Specifically, it alleges that people on terrorist watch lists can just waltz into a gun store and buy firearms like it's nothing.
Yeah, and to make matters even spicier, it throws some serious shade at former President Obama, accusing him of straight up misleading the public on this whole issue.
Oh, yeah, it's not pulling any punches.
Yeah,
So let's break this down, shall we, and see what's fact, what's fiction, and what's somewhere in between.
sounds like a plan.
All right, so where do we even begin with this thing?
Well, the audio clip kicks off by laying out Obama's supposed stance on this whole thing.
Okay,
It claims that Obama repeatedly stated that anyone, even someone on like the no-fly list or a terrorist watch list, could just stroll into a gun store and buy a firearm. No problem.
and the implication is that there was like nothing legally that could be done to stop it.
Exactly. That's the narrative the audio is pushing.
Okay, so then the clip brings in FBI Director James Comey and his testimony, right?
Yep, classic gotcha moment.
They focus on this exchange between Comey and Senator Grassley during a Senate hearing. And to give some context for those who might not be super familiar, the no-fly list is basically a list of individuals who are barred from boarding commercial flights in or out of the U.S.
Right.
And the terrorist watch list, it's kind of a broader category. It includes names of individuals suspected of being involved in terrorism.
Yeah.
So both of these lists, they're used by various government agencies for, security purposes.
Okay, that makes sense.
So back to Comey during this hearing. Grassley straight up asks him about this very issue, about whether people on these watch lists can buy guns. And the way the audio presents it, Comey totally debunks Obama's claim.
Really? So what did Comey actually say?
Well, he confirmed that the FBI actually does get notified when someone on a terrorist watch list tries to buy a firearm. Wait, hold on. How does that even work?
So it's through this system called the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS for short.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so whenever someone tries to buy a gun from a licensed dealer, the dealer has to contact NICS to verify if the buyer is, legally allowed to buy a gun.
Right.
And if the buyer's name happens to be on one of these watch lists, boom, the FBI gets an alert.
Wow. So there is a system in place to catch this kind of thing.
Exactly. It's not like people on watch lists are just slipping through the cracks unnoticed.
That's actually a pretty robust system. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty sophisticated. And the audio clip doesn't stop there. It goes on to highlight how Comey outlined a bunch of actions the FBI can take when they get these alerts.
Like what?
Well, they can delay the transaction to, investigate further. They can arrest the individual if they have probable cause for a crime. They can even directly confront the person or put them under surveillance.
So it's not just a passive notification system. They
Yeah.
actually can intervene.
Exactly. They have options.
Okay, so that paints a very different picture from what the audio initially suggested. That nothing could be done to stop these purchases.
Right. It seems like there are checks and balances in place.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
So essentially, the audio is using Comey's testimony to make this pretty bold claim that Obama was intentionally misleading the American people.
That's how they're framing it. They're suggesting that Obama was basically fear-mongering to push his gun control agenda.
Okay, but hold on a second. Couldn't it be that Obama was just, simplifying a complex issue for the public? I mean, explaining all the ins and outs of watch lists and background checks in a soundbite, it's not exactly easy.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It's always important to consider context when we're talking about political rhetoric. Politicians often have to condense complicated information into digestible sound bites for the general public.
Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're lying or being intentionally misleading.
Exactly. And this kind of leads us to the source's next point, the whole gun show loophole thing.
Oh, yeah, the audio mentions that briefly.
Uh,
What exactly is that referring to?
So it refers to the idea that private gun sales, like those sometimes happening at gun shows, they can bypass background checks.
Right. I've heard that argument before.
Yeah, it's a common talking point. But the thing is, federal law actually requires all licensed gun dealers to conduct background checks no matter where the sale takes place.
So even at gun shows.
Even at gun shows. So the source is basically implying that both the watch list issue and the gun show loophole are kind of fabricated problems.
Fabricated.
Yeah, like they're being blown out of proportion or even completely made up to scare people into supporting stricter gun control.
Wow, that's a pretty strong accusation.
It is.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the importance of being critical of the information we consume, especially when it comes from sources with a clear agenda.
For sure. So after all this back and forth, What are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Mm.
What should they keep in mind as they navigate this complex issue?
Well, first off, while legally someone on a watch list might be able to purchase a firearm,
Right.
in practice, the FBI has tools to intervene and often does.
That's a really important distinction.
It is. And it shows how this whole debate often hinges on the difference between legal restrictions and actual enforcement capabilities.
So the letter of the law versus what actually happens on the ground.
Exactly. And secondly, we always need to be cautious about accepting claims at face value, especially when they come from sources with a clear bias or agenda.
Absolutely. It's on us to do our own research, understand the nuances, and form our own informed opinions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So to wrap things up, what's a final thought-provoking question we can leave our listeners with? Something to ponder as they continue to explore this issue.
How about this? How can individuals critically assess politically charged information and navigate potentially biased sources to form their own informed opinions?
Ooh, that's a good one. The question we should all be asking ourselves constantly, especially in today's world where information overload is the norm.
Absolutely. Well said.
All right, everyone, that's a wrap on another deep dive. As always, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.